So good evening. Welcome to Square One podcasts. First time I've personally been involved in one of these, albeit it's I think several now that we've put out recently in terms of putting them on social media platforms for sort of general consumption. I wanted to get involved this evening because somebody that I've worked with for quite a long time now, over a number of years, working within the IT recruitment sector. In the capacity where I've been, out there recruiting contractors and permanent staff for Square One is Venencia, who's someone that I've always enjoyed working with, and we've got quite an important topic of conversation that we wanted to sort of cover off today. I sort of saw something that was posted up on social media recently from Venencia, and it kind of got me thinking because it correlates quite nicely with some of the projects that I've been working on and we've been working on at Square One, which are both incredibly important, but also really topical at the moment due to sort of events that have happened this year. And that is the sort of diversity and inclusion projects that we've been really looking to develop within the business. Working in the recruitment sector, of course, I've always sort of felt that, myself and my staff always been on the front line of this because we deal with, contractors and candidates, permanent people looking for jobs, as well as clients and that as well. So it's always been really, really integral, as well as what we're doing in-house. So I thought it was a great opportunity to pick up and sort of where we left off, a few years ago, Venencia, and get back in touch and to really to pick your brains on what is a really important topic. So welcome, good evening. I guess did you want to just give us a quick sort of synopsis of what you're up to at the minute?
So at the minute, I've just moved back to London from the Middle East, trying to get used to the grey weather, getting back into the job market, and just back to normal, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly the weather is, I don't know if it's something you can ever truly adjust to, but we know. I
love autumn, so it's okay.
Yeah, I left the office earlier and it's tropical, and then by the time I got to the train station, it was absolutely fine. Quite a nice mild evening, but
yeah.
So it's quite. I guess it's quite an interesting place to start. I mean, you mentioned there you've been working obviously in the Middle East, and
Yes.
and I guess it'd be interesting. So I personally, I've never worked in the Middle East. I've visited on a couple of occasions, and of course, it's in terms of sort of culturally compared to the UK is very different. And have you sort of ever, experienced anything that's sort of very different in terms of the way that things operate in that part of the world as opposed to the UK?
Definitely. It's very different, very diverse actually, and I think it's partly due to the fact that it's the geographic location. So by virtue of that, it is a diverse place. Really, I can't even remember how many nationalities we had in the company that I was working for, but it was very diverse, very different to the UK. I'm trying to think in what sense, actually.
I guess you get, as you mentioned, geographically where it is, and being often quite small countries that have a lot of expats going and working right as well. So that obviously attracts a lot of people. I mean, from my perspective, the recruitment industry, certainly Dubai for a period was kind of a really hot place to kind of, not in a literal sense, but in terms of going there and actually going to recruit. There was a big sort of rush to get UK recruiters to move over there, and you see it when you're there in terms of there's lots of other nationalities, as you say.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah, so I think this year, obviously, amongst other things, and we're not going to talk about COVID tonight because I think we've probably all exhausted that to death. But one of the big things that we saw back in sort of in the sort of late spring, early summer, of course, was the Black Lives Matter movement, and that's something that I think has captured the imagination of a lot of people in terms of just raising awareness of it.
Right.
Of course, it came about in very unfortunate circumstances, but the message that's been received off the back of that and continues hopefully to be received is such a powerful one. And I think it's really important that businesses, when they are looking to recruit, are not just trying to do things include sort of diversity and inclusion because it's a buzzword, but they're actually genuinely trying to embed it into their sort of DNA.
Right.
Have, how have you seen that sort of done well, if you like, in terms of sort of places that, I won't ask you to name specific companies, but in terms of just where you've been previously, maybe sort of examples of where that's worked well, and maybe, I guess, even that's the opposite, where maybe not so well.
So I'd say in my previous company in the Middle East, they saw diversity and inclusion as a very important topic. And this is something that they kicked off, I want to say, sometime last year in 2019. And they had, I'd say, three pillars that they were focusing on because, you know, when you're starting, you can't do everything. You have to realize what's your top priority. And what they decided to focus on was, you know, women in the workplace, in the C-suite, millennials, and people of determination is the term that they were using in that part of the world for people with special needs. So these are the three things that they were focusing on to make sure that, you know, they become an employer of choice for people with determination, and to make sure that, you know, millennials are included at the table. You know, you have, if you look at the statistics, you see that about 60% of the workforce was millennials. But then when it comes to decision making, are they invited to the table? Are they made to feel welcome? And one of the ways in which they were focusing on millennials to make sure that their voice is being heard is through reverse mentorship. Because, you know, normally when you talk about mentorship, it's a younger person who's starting out in their career and they're getting mentored by someone who's very experienced. They've been in the game for however many years. But then if you have a younger person mentoring the more experienced people, they bring something fresh to the table. They're more receptive to change, I would say, in most cases. So it's something that they were starting to focus on, and it was gaining traction.
Yeah, that's I think really interesting. We had a conversation. I remember going back about I guess it was a couple of months when we started talking about obviously recording this podcast, and the millennials are a group that I think often get discarded when it comes to talking about diversity and inclusion, and it's crazy because obviously running the business I do at Square One, we have such a heavy reliance on millennials. They are the sort of kind of lifeblood of our workforce coming through, and they bring a huge amount to the party that sometimes, you know, some of the older heads kind of discard it a bit, like, oh, you know, they don't understand what it's like to do this and this and this. But then they, it can mean that you miss out on a lot of good ideas and concepts that they can bring to the party. And then, of course, the one thing they definitely bring to the party is a huge amount of energy. I think, you know, this is kind of sort of trying to brand everybody, put everyone under the same umbrella. It just doesn't work, you know. And kind of the thing that you hear a lot of, and I'm sure you've probably heard the same, is that, you know, millennials are, you know, they're very entitled and they don't get, you know, they don't have to want for anything. You know, it's instant gratification every time. It's just not true. And it's the you know, I've learned a huge amount over the last, I'd say, particularly over the last couple of years. I run a session with a lot of the guys who are, you know, mid-20s, early 20s. You know, a nice sort of broad group of you know, guys and girls, and I sit down with them and basically say, look, what do you think about how a business is being run? Because I think that's quite important, because they've come up with some really good ideas that, to be honest, I've probably, having been doing something for quite a sustained period, you just don't really think of it.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, then unless you want to make sure that those ideas are coming in from all angles. I think you know, we've always tried to embrace. We was part of I guess it's called like a campaign. It was brought on a couple of years ago. It's women in recruitment, which, again, recruitment has traditionally always been a very male dominated industry. And I think, you know, of course, that completely negates, you know, and again, it's a lot of people kind of go, well, you know, it's you know, men do it and it's and it's rubbish. Of course, some of the best recruiters I've ever met are female, and they bring a enormous amount to the party. What I've always experienced actually is that often in the past, and I've not seen it for a little while, but sometimes women have been discarded because it's more down to the manager saying, I'm going to struggle to manage her. And I think, well,
Right,
that's
right.
you though, isn't it? As the manager,
Yeah.
that's the problem here. It's not down to the individual. So, yeah, it really is a sort of tough one. In terms of now you're back in the UK, have you found yourself, a new role?
I have found something.
Hmm.
Yes, indeed.
And is that involved with D&I as well?
No, not to the same level that I was involved in my previous role.
Hmm.
Um, Completely separate from DNI, but it's something that I obviously want to continue pursuing in my personal life. After hours with work, I still want to be involved.
Yeah.
Whether if it's in the community, volunteering, it's still something that I really want to be part of.
Yeah, it is important, and I think it's that raised awareness now has got everybody kind of thinking about it as well. And I think also people now understand that it's across lots of different spectrums as well. As you said, the employer that you mentioned, obviously when you're working previously, they're coming at it from all angles. Have you what sort of, I guess, sort of in terms of initiatives, what sort of things have you seen that you think have worked really well and have helped to create that sort of inclusive environment, the sort of thing that is, I guess, transferable into other businesses?
That we were doing at the previous company. So they were. I'll just talk a little bit about people of determination. So they created internship program for them to come and work for the company. Most of them had wanted to work for the company for such a long time, or at least in the industry anyway. But due to their disabilities, it's almost like people just give up on them and think, you can't enter the workforce. So they gave them that opportunity. And out of I think it was about 12 that they created an internship program for, 3 actually ended up landing permanent roles. So this is one of the initiatives that they had in place. And that was, it was received very well. So going forward, hopefully that company will definitely become an employee of choice for people of determination. And then with millennials, as I mentioned before, one of the initiatives was the reverse mentorship. And I think it really kicked off earlier on this year, and it had a really large uptake. So it'll be interesting to see how far, I will be following how far they get to with that program same time next year.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. We want obviously to see that businesses follow through on this as well. It's not something that is kind of, it's fashionable, or they feel obligated to do something at the minute and then actually
they don't follow through.
Yeah, you kind of get 12 months down the line. It's like, oh, what was that thing we was doing? Oh yeah, don't worry about that anymore. It's like we've moved on to the next thing. And it's like it's so important, and I think
especially with this topic, like you said, it can't be something that everyone jumps on right now because it's trending. It needs to be embedded in the company's DNA, in their recruitment strategy as well.
I think something that I've found interesting, of course, I have a lot of exposure. I talk to a wide range of customers, clients of ours, and even potential customers of ours on a daily basis. And something that I'm definitely experiencing, not in every instance, of course, but it's certainly fairly frequently, is that some companies are a bit scared by it, as in they're tiptoeing around it and kind of, right, we know we need to do something, but we don't want to say the wrong thing, and we don't. And I find it quite interesting because, of course, that suggests that they haven't necessarily thought of it before, and that's not. It's not ideal, but it's not necessarily a bad thing that they're now addressing that. Okay, because I think there's certainly there will be people out there, individuals, companies, whoever, who kind of acknowledge that, you know what, maybe I didn't really think of it that way, and I didn't really consider the fact that is. It's always going to have negative connotations if I'm making comments that maybe about something or somebody that actually is just determined based on how they look or sort of their background or whatever it might be. So that I think has been something that one of the reasons I'm very pleased. You know, as a business, Square One, we've always embraced this. I think we are embracing it increasingly so now because it has become a more pertinent point. But what I'm starting to do is work in partnership with some of our clients as well to make sure that we help them, because as I said earlier, we are very much frontline with recruitment. So when we're finding, it comes right from our staff need to be aware of this, so that when they're qualifying candidates before they send them across to the customers, they are not in any way discriminating as to kind of who they do or don't send. There's no kind of preconceptions about things. And then, of course, when they're then talking to clients to make sure that that's not the case as well. I think there's a couple of customers we've worked with who said that they're just going to take off, when we send CVs through, take off all the names, contact details. So you have no way of knowing.
I like that.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I like that. Because I've always wondered, and I guess this will be a question for you. I've always wondered when I'm filling like an application form, for example, for a job, and then it comes to, asking my age, my gender, things like that. I always wonder, how is this information being used? Because does this mean, okay, apart from my name, maybe you can tell that I'm a female. Am I going to be discriminated against because I'm this age, I'm a millennial, I'm a female, I'm this, I'm that, I'm black, for example. So I always wondered, is it used for auditing purposes, and does that information actually get to the recruitment manager, or how does it work? I'm curious.
Yeah, well, this is it, and it depends on the individual company, of course, but you do wonder why it is important, because the point, of course, is always is that you need the best person for the job
with the right skill set. Yes,
absolutely. So therefore, that should be judged based on the CVs, what the skills represent, the way the CV is presented, of course, relevant projects, that sort of thing that they've done. But yeah, the age, race, nationality, whatever you like of that person shouldn't come into it. So. But it'd be interesting, and of course I use that in the loosest possible sense, to sort of see as to how many businesses actually are looking at a CV and going, well, well, we kind of wanted a man to do that, or we wanted someone who was going to be maybe 50 years old, who's a bit more experienced, and kind of they're making that judgment before they've even read the CV. We all live in hope, of course, that that's not the situation, but. We're probably all aware that one of the reasons we're even having this conversation now is because it's not really the scenario, is it? We see it happen all of the time, and the problem is, I think it's also, I think as a country that, in terms of, and I refer to the UK, is taking sort of great leaps forward over the last few decades in terms of, what is considered acceptable and what's not. But still today, there's lots of things that. I hear it, people making comments. It's like, well, it's only a joke. It's like, but it's not if it offends somebody.
Not everyone's laughing.
I was talking to somebody, a friend, only yesterday, and they were telling me that they were on a Zoom call, and it was a Zoom call of managers. I think there's about 8 or so of them. One of them, my friend, is a female. And one of the guys on the call said, can you take notes? Like, assuming that, okay, because you're a female, you'll take them. It's like, well, now I was very proud of her, because what I know she did is she actually turned around and rather than kind of like just letting it go, or, and also rather than maybe sort of blowing up about it, which probably the best response either. She actually had the sort of gumption to go and talk to this guy and say, actually, that's not cool. Like, why were you assuming that because I'm the female, I'll take the notes? It's very demeaning. So I think that's the sort of thing that needs to be kind of become less habitual for people to be sort of just saying off the cuff and going, it's okay, because some of the things that were said off the cuff in the 70s are frowned upon deeply now, because
nowadays, exactly.
I think, if we fast forward 20-30 years from today, I think we'll probably be looking back, well, I can't believe you'd ever say that, you know. So, but yeah, it's a big education. I think, you know, I guess one of the big things, social media, you know, has its pluses and negatives for sure. I think you know, I certainly don't look at social media as a kind of a nirvana, but I do believe that helps spread, of course, you know, a very positive message in some respects as well. And also, I think it does highlight people that maybe are not doing it, and as such, it can help them to address what they're doing as well. It's such an important part of you know, a business's profile, to make sure they've got a strong diversity and inclusion. You know,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And you know what I've noticed as well, when I was doing my job search a couple of months ago, just on LinkedIn, the amount of companies that are looking to recruit in the diversity and inclusion space. You see roles, diversity and inclusion program manager, lead, VP. So it seems like a lot of companies are, you know, waking up, and I do hope that this is something that they will continue on and actually, you know, build that capability within their companies.
I get involved in when we agree terms of business with clients, obviously going through them and seeing what they are. And one thing I'm starting to see now, much more so, is you know, what is your diversity and inclusion policy? You know, and
Right.
and
Okay.
that's encouraging as well, because of course I wouldn't say it's a new thing, but I certainly think that it's being paid much more attention to now, as in it matters really what the answers are. Whereas in the past, it's kind of like, do you have one? Tick yes, tick no,
Right.
whatever. And now it seems to be, okay, what is it? You know, and what is it that you're doing, and kind of what kind of a difference are you trying to make? Because,
Yeah.
you know, it is really important. I guess for yourself as well, that's something that, you know, you mentioned earlier that you'd be keen to kind of get back into that in the future as well. So that's always something that, you know, when you've got such a you know, keen sort of interest, a passion in it, then that's gonna,
Yeah.
you
Oh yeah, no, definitely that will continue.
yeah.
You know, and even with like my voluntary work, the last piece that I did back in the Middle East was, you know, working with people with determination during the Special Olympics. So I'm hoping that I can continue on with my voluntary work, and it actually happens in the space of diversity and inclusion.
So when you were working overseas, obviously, you know, in the Middle East, it's, do you feel, you know, and I don't think this is too controversial to say, but obviously that in the past there has been, you know, stories that they, in some instances, have been a bit behind the curve in terms of how they sort of view sort of women, etc., in sort of Saudi Arabia, particularly, that sort of part of the world. And
Oh, yeah. Okay. Sorry. Continue.
no. I was going to say, do you feel that that's kind of, that they're making a big effort to kind of address that now, in terms of, and you know, I'm not trying to suggest that it's the same within every part of the Middle East, but there's certainly
Yeah.
stories. Qatar, when they won the World Cup, you know, obviously I know obviously in Abu Dhabi, but you get sort of stories of kind of mistreatment of sort of labour.
Yeah. I think it's quite interesting how what the perception that I had of you know, United Arab Emirates before I moved there, and then when I moved there, it was such an eye opener and a very pleasant surprise actually. In terms of, you know, people think that women are mistreated in that part of the world with specific gender roles, but I found it to be very empowering. And in most cases, I actually thought, oh my goodness, it's actually really cool to be a woman. For
Yeah.
example, little things like you would go grocery shopping and there's a specific section just for women only. So, you know, you're guaranteed to find parking on a really busy Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
Whereas like, if I'm just comparing, in the UK, you have, you know, the mother and child parking. So you do have the mother and child parking, but you also have ladies only parking. So I find in certain ways it was very favorable for women. So that whole thing of women are mistreated, I personally did not experience that at all. It was a very, very pleasant surprise, actually.
Yeah. Well, no, that's
Even in the workplace as well. Not just the expats, even the you know, the Emirati women as well. They're given so much, they have such a large platform and are encouraged to move up in the organization. So
Mm.
yeah, it was a pleasant surprise.
Do you feel uh, in the UK at the minute that there's enough kind of press coverage about what is kind of going on in terms of different movements, etc.? Do you think that there's room for more? Do you think that maybe it's done in a way that it kind of, are they always concentrating on the same themes? Do you think they should be maybe looking at it more from the perspective of kind of what do we need to do differently more so? I think there's a lot of acknowledgement at the minute, but I don't know if there's a lot of kind of suggestions to how, I think people, they suggest as to how people in society, of course, should interact. I guess it starts, of course, there as well.
Yeah.
Do you think there's enough in there about how businesses should be?
I don't think there's enough, you know. I feel, see, it's one thing to highlight where society could improve or where companies could improve, but then I'm sure there are companies out there that are actually doing it, and we need to hear more from them so that the ones that are lagging behind, or as you mentioned before, they're sort of like shying away from the topic, they can say, oh, okay, this is how this company is doing it, and this is how we could perhaps implement it in our company. So I feel that that's missing. You know, if you just look at what's being covered at the moment, it just seems we continue to talk about the issue, and I'm in no way taking away from the issue, because the issue is there, that, you know, companies do need to become more diverse, and when they're diverse, they need to be more inclusive, actually, because I think it's easy to become diverse, but to make sure that you're including everyone, that's more difficult. So where companies are doing that, they need to be making more noise, I think.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think you know, I watch, you know, the football, for example, and before every game, all the players take the knee, and they've done it consistently now since whenever the football came back in the summer. I kind of, you lose track a little, don't you, this year? But it's I guess it's kind of roughly sort of June, so that sort of time. You see it before every game, and it's obviously in relation to the Black Lives Matter movement,
Right.
And that of course is good, and it's almost like the sort of, you know, people are of course now much more aware of that, and the sort of Black History Month this month is a lot of recognition of that. Again, it's really good. But you wonder whether actually there could be more focus in some of the other areas as well, which I don't necessarily know if there are. And I think they talk a lot about, obviously, society is absolutely, you know, sort of where, you know, people need to be able to respect each other on the street and be able to kind of, you know, get on along with each other. But such a huge part of what if this is going to be a success moving forward, is going to entail is the you know, how people interact in the workplace, you know, and that's the big thing. You know, I think you know, like I said, I've mentioned it a few times on this call that, you know, I think I'm proud of Square One as a business for what we do. I know we can do more. I know we can educate more. We're rolling out training constantly on this, which means that our staff are kind of brought up to speed, because it's such an important thing that within the workplace where they're interacting across the desks, and you know, we've got people from all, you know, sort of types of backgrounds, etc., all working together, and that's what we want. That's one of the joys of living and working in London, I believe, is that you have such an eclectic mix of different people, and that eclectic mix of people is what makes you know, Square One tick as a business, and it makes us you know, more successful, because as you mentioned, I think right at the beginning of this conversation, that they by having that, it just brings many more ideas to the party.
Absolutely. Because I always think, you know, how boring would the world be? I'm not even talking about just a company where everyone looked the same, they look the same ideas, no one's bringing anything fresh to the table. You need diversity. You need it, you know. It keeps things fresh, new ideas, and where companies want to market to, you know, a different group of people, how can you do that if you don't even have people from that group sitting at your table helping you to make those decisions?
Yeah, I completely agree. So what's next for yourself in terms of work? Are you into a permanent position? Are you into a contract now?
I'm contracting at the moment,
Okay.
so it's a very exciting role.
Yeah,
So apart from work, I'm still trying to unpack and,
yeah,
really settle back home and, just catch up with friends and family. And hopefully, I've been seeing on in the press that, the lights will be going on in November. So hopefully, I'll be out and about next month. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and then start to look for initiatives as well that I could perhaps volunteer with, in the D&I space.
I think that's a really good idea as well. I think for people that haven't necessarily had as much exposure to this sort of thing as maybe they would have liked, there are lots of initiatives that you can get involved in, which will allow you to do that, to volunteer, to
Yeah.
kind of help get involved. And yeah, I think that can only broaden your horizons as well with it. So I think that's really good. So yeah, how long have you been back now? So in terms of the packing, is it mostly unpacked, or is it a case of
Mostly unpacked, mostly unpacked. It's just now a case of what goes where. So yeah, mostly unpacked. Yeah.
Well, I moved into this house a few months ago, and I have to say there's
Mhm.
still quite a lot of stuff. I've managed to make this room look like I know, like I've been living here for years. As in, I've put a few pictures up, etc. But yeah, there's tons to do. But
Still boxes.
yeah, there absolutely is. And yeah, Christmas lights going on soon. I think that's it bring a bit of cheer. I noticed in my local town actually, they've started to put Christmas. There's a reindeer above the
Oh, nice.
by a hairdresser, which I thought is we haven't even had Halloween yet, but it's
Something to look forward to.
well, I read online that the sort of the justification behind it is, what, it's not been a great year, so
Why
let's
not?
let's try and
Exactly.
celebrate. So,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
Valencia, it's been a real pleasure catching up again, obviously, and I really appreciate hearing your thoughts and opinions on this topic, and it's something that I'm really pleased to be able to sort of share this time on the podcast with you, to sort of to sort of get an understanding of your thoughts on it, because it's really helpful, and I think it will benefit me, and it will benefit obviously what I'm doing with the business at Square One in the future,
Yeah.
to keep talking to people like yourselves and everybody that I kind of I've worked with in the past that have got a real strong opinion on this. So yeah,
Yeah.
really appreciate your time
Oh,
and
that's okay.
appreciate people listening won't realise, but we're eating quite late into the evening now, so I appreciate you taking the time in the evening as well to.
That's okay. I enjoyed talking to you. Thank you.
Yeah, so look, we'll obviously catch up again soon. This is these podcasts are something we're going to be doing more and more of. So at some point in the future, I'd love to get you back on, and a
I
bit
look forward to that.
what we was talking about earlier. It'd be nice to see maybe how things have developed. 6 months, 12 months down the line as well, to see how people have kind of carried things through, and what changes we've seen in that time as well. But
Yeah.
brilliant. On that note, I'm gonna. I hope you have a good evening.
And you
Not sure.
enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll probably go and finish my dinner now, and
I'm going to make dinner now.
that's it. And look, yeah, real pleasure, and look forward to catching up again. So,
All right. Take care, Adam.
thank you, Valencia.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.